I didn't grow up in Harlow Park. I landed there by accident. Cheaper rent, a new lease, a quiet corner where the streetlights hummed like tired bees. 3 blocks from my apartment was a small convenience store wedged between a laundromat and an old barber shop, Harlow Market. The first time I walked in, the bell over the door chimed and the air felt heavy, like the store kept its own weather. Fluorescents buzzed, aisles were too narrow, and by the entrance 2 men stood like statues, cups at their feet, eyes tracking without hurry. I just needed dish soap and bread. When the owner stepped from the back, I could feel the temperature change. She had a look of intense, deliberate attention. "You're new around here," she said. It wasn't a question. "Welcome," she added, her voice low, almost kind. Then she gave the oddest smile, like she was finally placing a familiar face. I paid and left, my chest tight, with a breath that tasted like pennies. I went back a few days later, and that same weight pressed down. It wasn't fear, it was density. As if every object in there had a small voice saying, "Wait." We started talking. It's what you do to make a place livable. Her laugh was big, room-filling, and her humor had an elbow to it, like she knew exactly where to nudge you. The 2 men were always at their posts outside, like parentheses around whatever happened in that doorway. Over the weeks, I learned the rhythms of the block. One evening, an old friend from grade school, Marcus, saw me outside my building. He lived just a few houses down. After we caught up, he asked, "You been going to that market?" I said yes. He tightened his jaw. "That lady in there," he said, his voice hot but quiet. "She made life hard for us. Real hard." He didn't give details, just mentioned arguments, bad blood. His wife had gotten very sick, a sickness that pulls time thin. He hated that anyone could carry that kind of intent. I didn't know what to say. Grief makes a neighborhood smaller. A few months later, Marcus's wife passed away. Harlow Park looked the same, but felt rearranged, like someone had quietly moved all the furniture 2 inches to the left. The market's bell still chimed. The 2 men still stood by the door. One late afternoon, I was at the counter with a bottle of cleaner and some coffee. The owner watched me, her eyes bright. "I like you," she said, casually. "If you want, I can help you with something. Someone." She didn't lean in or whisper. She just let the words sit there. "You tell me what you want," she said, tapping the glass, "and I'll put the clock on it." I understood what she was offering. I told her no, politely, with a smile I didn't feel. If I was going to share a life with someone, it wouldn't be because time was wound up like a toy. She just shrugged. "Suit yourself." Then she told me a story, like it was a recipe measures, timing, simple items. She said once, long ago, she set a plan in motion, and a man returned on the minute, as promised. She mentioned a rumble in her house at that exact time, not an earthquake, more like a deep truck rolling through the crawl space. I told myself it was just a story. Still, I left my hallway light on that night. The neighborhood was held together by routine. But when the sun went down and the neon flickered, Harlow Park felt like a stage set built over old ground. I started noticing things. The 2 men outside the market, they never seemed drunk enough to stumble. Some customers would enter with a blank face and leave with intense concentration. Once the lights browned out for a second and I smelled warm cardamom, though there were no candles lit, I started noticing patterns in the timing of things. A black cat would cross Pine Avenue at the same minute every Thursday. One night I woke at 11:57 to a vibration in my window, like a truck in the wrong gear. I watched the clock hit 12 o'clock, and there was a small click in the building's bones, like a radiator remembering to breathe. Time went on. She'd nod at me from the doorway. I'd nod back. She once said, "Every place has its own rules. Harlow Park plays by the rules it made for itself." Then her hours changed. The open sign stayed dark some mornings. The 2 men at the door vanished for a week. Neighbors traded updates on the sidewalk. Someone said she wasn't well. Someone else saw people visiting older women, a quiet man in a hat. One rainy Tuesday, men in black jackets carried a box inside her store. The next day, green branches were laid neatly over the counter. The barbershop owner told me quietly that she had gotten much worse. "It happens fast sometimes," he said to the air. Then, one evening, I saw her again. She waved me inside, even though the sign said closed. She was thinner, but that deliberate attention was still there. "Don't worry," she said, her voice sanded down. "You're fine." It sounded like reassurance, and nothing like it. We stood there among the chips and soup cans. "People want outcomes," she said. "Outcomes want payment. The only question is who covers the bill." She laughed, a small, quiet version of her usual laugh. "You still don't want anything?" she asked. I told her I just wanted quiet. She nodded. "That," she said, "is the most expensive thing." After that, the store closed for 3 days. When it reopened, a niece or a cousin was behind the counter. Someone with her eyes, but not her history. The 2 men were gone. The air felt lighter. Word came the way it always does in a neighborhood, not with an announcement, but from the way people moved. Less noise, softer steps. She was gone. I stopped at the threshold of the store that evening. The bell didn't ring. Grief isn't about closeness. It's about gravity. I felt the street tilt a degree. At midnight on the 3rd night, I woke to that same small click in the building's bones. Under it was a slow, low vibration, like a truck idling under the floor. It faded as the clock shifted from 12 o'clock to 12:01. The next morning, a faint line of salt had appeared along the baseboard of my living room. I swept it up and found a tiny, folded paper triangle tucked against the wall, tied with red thread. It wasn't mine. I didn't open it. I took it to the market. The niece looked at it, then at me, her eyes wide. She went to the back and returned, placing it carefully in a glass jar that already held 2 identical triangles. "She left a lot of these around," the woman said. 4 people she liked. I asked what they were. "Reminders," she said. "Pay attention to your yes and your no." I walked home under a sky so clear it felt rinsed. That night, the air in my apartment felt ordinary for the first time. No hums, no clicks, no penny-tasting breath. I slept. Quiet is rented, not owned. Months later, I caught my reflection in the market's door. Behind me, in the glass, were 2 figures at the edges of the frame, one on the left, one on the right. When I turned, nobody was there. The bell above the door rang once, paused, then rang twice. No one had come in. The new owner looked up, startled, then smiled to herself, as if she recognized the rhythm. I smiled too, because I finally understood. This block keeps the count. Some places measure time in returns, and if you stand at the corner of Harlow and Pine long enough, you'll feel it. The density of air where stories stack, the hum under the floorboards at midnight. The street is quieter now, but quiet, here, never means empty. It means someone paid the bill. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.